Welcome to a windy episode 77, the Run the Hills podcast, sponsored by Chia Charge. Chia Charge have been fueling adventures with real food made with real ingredients since 2012. My goodness, that's like, wow, it's
the age of my middle child. Crikey.
That's a lot of chia seeds. Yeah, go and check them out at www.chiacharge.co.uk. Yeah, super windy over here, Eddie. It's
too many baked beans, mixed beans stew.
We've got a double story. I do love baked beans, actually. When we had a chat about toast, and Deb said about baked beans on toast.
Oh, I love a baked bean. Do you know, if you buy a can here in Carrefour, like down the Ingershire, they're like £6 a can. Every so often, like every couple of months, I'm like, kids, come on, let's crack open the tin. We've got a couple of tins in the cupboard for that real low emergency. And then if one of the kids goes, I don't like it, I'm like, you enjoy that. It's like €1 a bean in there.
They don't. It's not a. Yeah, I don't think you don't get them in France, and I don't even think they do them in the States. I saw one of these weird reaction videos about these Americans trying British food, and baked beans was one of them. But yeah, it's wonderful food. But yeah, it's mega windy.
Personal wind. It's nature's wind.
Nature's wind. Yeah, with two storms. I can't remember what they're called now, but the reality isn't as bad, at least for us anyway, as the forecast. But there's another one coming tomorrow. But yeah, it's funny. This is where hopefully the bike will come into play, because some workouts just can't really happen when it's...
Yeah, I've had a lot of whining on Training Peaks of windy, trees down, too windy, done on treadmill, that sort of thing.
Do you want to go first and catch up?
It's extensive, listeners. Prepare for 2 hours worth of half-term whining. And Tim will tell me off, go, you just talked about it. Sorry about that. What's up? Oh, the dogs are so like the kids, aren't they? As soon as you start talking, they have to come around your ankles and start going, yeah, better. Oh, yeah, I've had a super busy week. Exciting things. I was thinking, just as I was doing my treadmill session, that if you're watching this on YouTube and you're wondering why I have a slightly sheeny face and red, and I've tried to clip my hair back because it's so sweaty and I didn't have time to have a shower. It's half term. So I've been juggling the... yes, you can eat that. Again, like the children, they just come in and start like demanding food. Yeah, I've been normally in February half-term week, I take the week as like a deload so that I don't get stressed about trying to juggle the training. And that was my plan, but maybe I've made a bit of a foolish error. And because I had COVID in January, I looked back on like my hourly stats. So I like to try and build... I do loads and loads of hours of training in January, February and March. And then I almost half that as I go into running, because you can't run as much as you can ski and stuff. And I was like, so I'm kind of feeling that I started a bit later. So I felt like I'm okay. I feel good. I'm doing all my sessions, the volume's building. So I was like, I don't think I need to back off. That's the sort of thing that is the fatal last word, isn't it? When you go, I don't feel I need to do this, I feel really good. So I have been juggling the training. I've had some week when I've had to go to Bryn, just tell me to go and get on the bike, tell me to go and start it, because then I procrastinate. Because when the kids are at school, like you do, we have our slot, like you get out that first slot in the morning and that's done, and then I have another slot like just before I go and get them, where I have to do my training there, and then I get them and then it's kind of done. But when they're at home, the slots are all out of place. So I find then, I know, it blows my mind. And I hate not doing my session first thing in the morning and then having to do it at like 7 o'clock. I really hate it.
I don't like that.
I feel it's really good training as well. Like really good training to have to change things around, to do things differently, to do things when you don't want to do things, to do things when you're like, oh, I've just had my lunch and now I've got to go and do this or whatever. So making it all fit in, and it's not what you'd find in the coaching manuals, like how to really push yourself right to the edge by Edwina Sutton. But it's also like I find it like kind of like that grit and that determination to get stuff done, and like sweating in my back room. It's like, well, this is ultra running. This is, these are the bits where the grind,
the hustle, the problem solving.
Hustle, the problems. It's all like part of it, which you know, 99.9% of the population would be like, can you not just, you know, sit down? So this week has been busy, but also what I've been doing, I love, so it gives me an anxiety, is race admin. So I've booked a build-up race towards the Spine Challenger. So my year looks a little bit now completely changed to what it was. UTMB ruined my life. So I got over that, as you know, within about a week.
You're not over it, are you, really?
I'm never going to be over it. So I've changed my year totally, which is fine. You know, let's roll with the punches. Just because you like decide you're going to do something, it's fine to go a different path. I'm not ashamed. But you know, just because you decide on one boyfriend, it doesn't mean, you know, you can't like back to when we were 40. So I've totally changed. So I've entered the Spine Summer Challenger thinking, it's a great way to see the course. It's a great way to be out in the Pennine Way. It's a great way to practice the kit. And having talked to Debs as well, like get the impression from lots of people that done the Spine, really the only way is by being out on the course and with the kit that you can, you learn to problem solve and you learn what you like. And you can only put yourself into so far in that position when you're training, because there's always the caveat when you're training that you can stop and you can go home. Mm-hmm. Whereas once you're out there, you've got to work out, like, okay, my pack is rubbing my shoulders. You know, I'll pack that kit wrong, you know, and when you're training, you just kind of like get on with it, don't you? Whereas when you're actually racing, so
even just the mindset, the prep for the race.
I think so.
It's brilliant.
And so I've already started getting the pre-race anxiety of all like, because it's a big deal when you're a mum as well, because you've got to, then I have to organise everything else. So I'm starting early. So I've booked the race. I've booked accommodation before the race, trying to find, I'm not going to have a car. So then I've got to work out, right, how am I going to get to the airport from here? Okay, I've sorted that one out. Then I've got to fly. Then where do I fly to? And then I've got to get from the airport to the race start. And then I can't be too far. Well, I'm 10 miles from Edale. I'll sort that out. Then
kind of Manchester, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so if we're going to fly to
Manchester, Sheffield,
and then get to Edale, I think I can get a train. So I'm going to fly 2 days before, because it's exhausting, the travel, because I'm going to have these big bags as well. So then I'm like, don't want to really be doing that thinking tomorrow morning I've got to get up and run 100 and plus miles. So I'm going to travel a few days early. So, but I think doing that all like loads of time before, so you've got time to sort of get your head around it as well. So I've sort of that. I've booked all my accommodation. I've booked a hotel at the end as well, because I started booking a hotel at the start at the end, and then I was like, oh no, I'm not. That's just the sort of thing I do. I was like, no, I'm much further up north. And it's a K from the finish. I'm like, somebody might take me to the hotel at the end. Or I'll start dragging my bag along the road and somebody might stop and say, poor lady.
It's a legal hitchhike, isn't it?
And so I booked a hotel all these little things I find just helps alleviate the start of the pre-race anxiety. I've started looking at kit. I've ordered my compass. We now have to have something. We have to have a poo shovel, Gary.
Is that part of the kit?
That's part of the kit, which I actually think is good, because I've often thought that when I've been running, like you do like long trail races, I'm like, and I think men are worse than women at this.
What happens if you Google poo shovel? What comes up? What are we looking at?
Oh no, I haven't. I just looked on the Facebook group and someone's found like a really lightweight one, and I'm like, I'm just going to get that one too. But I'm like, it's totally right, because if you think of like when there's big trail races and people are out for 24 hours, how much human is left on the trail? And if you go on the Facebook Spine group, I mean, there's a comment of like somebody pooed outside someone's house.
Oh, what the hell, man. Oh, what's wrong with people?
Oh, it's wrong with people. So now but I'm totally up with that. You know, I prefer the poo shovel to the jet ball. I'm slightly upset about the jet ball over the poo shovel. But anyway, so I've been doing race admin. I've been ticking off my sessions. I've had to do some more treadmill sessions than I've done all year, which I did okay, I'll tell you the two I did. You're all waiting, Tim. 5 by 12 minutes at 10% with a 2-minute jog in between.
Oh,
did you do that, Gary?
Well, I haven't got a treadmill, so no.
Right.
Well, this is it.
Spring came in, he was like, how long are you going to be? And I was like, an hour and a half.
I'd love to be able to do something like that, but we don't have those kind of hills to take a
No.
2-minute recovery and then go again.
Yeah. And I struggle. I've been building up these hill sessions, but the 5x12, I've got about 20 minutes uphill before it hits.
And what's your heart rate for the 12?
So I keep it at the moment with this big volume, I keep it about 155, get to about 155. So it's working. If I go any higher than that, it becomes too much. I'm like dying, and then the form goes. So I call them strength as well. Like I'm tempo strength, but I'm not going to that. I can still shout at the kids, basically. That's my best investment, a treadmill, when you're at home with the kids and you want to carry on training, is a treadmill. Anyway, did that, not too bad. And then this morning, I actually did 11 in the end because I felt, this is how hardcore I am on myself. I felt the first one wasn't good enough. So I did 11 by 4 minutes because I felt I hadn't really gone. And again, I went up to that 155 heart rate and it wasn't very fast, Gary. And in my head, I was giving myself a hard time that I should be running faster. But I'm really strict about that heart rate, and the heart rate was at 155, and so I couldn't run any faster. So it wasn't impressive.
Oh, that's only 12 by what?
4 minutes, 1 minute jog between. No percent.
See, that's good. That's literally double one of my sessions. I did 6 times a K. So
but you're probably going a bit faster than me as well.
I don't know. maybe not. I've not checked your Strava, but you could tell me. I was probably just under 6 minute mile and about 5. So they varied, 5:45, some were 6:12, depending on the terrain.
Yeah, so it's tough. It's been a tough week, but I've ticked off these little boxes and starting to feel like, okay, I'm moving into the races are coming this year. I always feel like after Christmas, you can sort of hide and they're never going to happen. And then they slowly start. You must feel a bit the same about Lakeland, like actually having to start to move towards it a little bit now. What the listeners really want to hear is how many 200s and 400s you've done this week.
None, no 200s, 400s. But it's funny you're saying about, when you're starting to think about the races ahead, and because Kielder was cancelled, I'm still not replaced that with anything. So I thought, I've got not much on the calendar, but then looked on the planner, and a week before is the Howarth Hobble, so there is something. So attention shifts to that, but literally, I think it's 4 weeks away. So there's no training to be done. You're into your taper pretty much now. So I don't feel ready for a race.
It's just the same. I entered 100K in England. I've sneakily done that in April. The weekend after my little sister's baby's due, because I'm like, well, I want to go over and meet the baby. I'll be out that day, and I'm like, I'm so not ready for that. I can't even imagine running that. I can't. 10 miles seems a long run for me at the moment. But
the timing's good. Is it first baby?
First baby, yeah. I've told her she needs it. I've said if it's not out by then, I'll be.
I think Esme was about 2 weeks late, so you might just.
I think I've got enough time. I think I've given myself 3 weeks, post 3 weeks due date. Good. Come on. Anyway, enough about me. What you've been doing?
What have I been doing? Well, I did a really lovely evening last night. Did a wedding rehearsal for my sister's wedding tomorrow, and
it's tomorrow. Stop it!
Yeah, it's going to be. The forecast is snow, so it's definitely going to be.
Now, is there an outdoor element to this wedding?
Well, no, only in between kind of getting out of buildings and into vehicles. There's nothing else other than that. But it was really nice. And I've got to walk down the aisle, so I've got a job to do.
Gary, you've got to be crying like a small child.
Oh goodness me, I hope not. And I've got to take it down the aisle, and then give her right hand to her future husband's right hand. There's lots of things that can't mess it up. I've got to be. Got to be
on the game. The full outfit?
No, I'm not in the, I think the ushers and sometimes the fathers of the bride, they have like a matching suit. I'm not in that outfit for the day, so that's quite good. So I'm not that official, but yeah, walking down the aisle, giving my sister it is, if I think about too long, I do get a bit teary, so we'll move on. Okay. Workout wise, I did a 6 times 1K, like we said, and that was good. 90-second recovery. That went really well. And then I think the latter part of last week, I might have mentioned it to you, I did my 2 times 4 minutes, 3 times 3 minutes, and then 4 times 2 minutes, all heart rate based. that zone for like
almost the same session.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it. Not it was again on the trails, so it was the pace was all over the place, but I really did enjoy it, and probably got the heart rate up to maybe like 160s. About the 160. I don't really go above that very often.
Me neither. I try not to as much as possible.
But it's a really good job. I don't normally have any nutrition when I'm doing workouts, but on my 2 or 3 mile jog warm up, I really needed some help. So luckily, I had a classic Chia Charge bar in my pouch. I'm not just saying this, listeners, because Chia Charge sponsored the podcast.
But I always have a flapjack somewhere or some sort of snack in a pocket. If I search hard enough, there's a little snack somewhere.
It was great. I felt a bit flat and had that, and munched on it and got the session done. So that was awesome. But I did think, I remember on the kind of about 4 mile shuffle home after workout was done, I felt pretty shattered.
4 miles. Oh Lord, I hate it if my cool down's longer than 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's because it's about 3 miles to the start, and there's this kind of traily loop. It's the old Monk's race route, so I just like doing that. It's up and down, but then ultimately there's a kind of 3 or 4 mile jog home. I've made a conscious decision because we mentioned it with you, not liking to do your workouts in the evening. I'm always chasing my strength and conditioning sessions. So I've made a decision to do them in the morning before I run with Rex, and short-term results are very positive. We're Thursday, but I did one yesterday. I've done 3 basically. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Really?
Yeah, smashed them all. And I've also done a couple of mobility sessions in the evening. It's a lot easier for me to do those, say, while watching the TV.
Yeah.
It's not disturbing the family, foam rolling and stretching my.
Dad, what are you doing?
Yeah, no, they're so used to that. But I just need to. I set the alarm early to get up. I've still not mastered getting up early, so I'm having an extra hour in bed still. But I'm just going to work later, so. Well, no, I'm the boss. It's all right. So yeah, next phase is get out of bed early, and then but yeah, I can't complain. I've done 3 strength and conditioning sessions and 2 mobility sessions, and we're Thursday, so that is brilliant. Neil and I went to the lakes, and I did a Bob Graham round recce on leg 4, bit of and that one back to Wasdale, and then we did leg 4. I think it was like 8,000 feet. So that is a big, big day. And anybody will know this who has been on the fells at winter. It's something like the Bob Graham run, where you're off to see the main paths. Quite often you're looking for the fell lines, the trod. Well, in the snow, when we're on the high fells, those lines weren't there. And probably more me than Neil made a meal of finding some of the best lines on that leg 4 section. So I hope when we do the Bob Graham round, it's cleared a bit, because it's such a funny thing. Anyone who's been there will know, you could just drift, say, maybe 10 meters to the left or right, and then you're kind of going over. The terrain underfoot is so different, like rocky. While if you just kept to the left, you've got a relatively clear path. So we had a bit of that going on, and thankfully there had been some walkers out there before us, so we could see footprints. And so that kept us, we had it on our watches, so we weren't going to be lost, but we just took a lot longer. Maybe overall, it could have amounted maybe to about 20 minutes of extra time just faffing around. So that wasn't great, but it was great just to get back out on the course and refresh. About 87 miles, I think, for the week. 20 hours of exercise. I was trying to, because you mentioned about 20 hours. So
don't try, Gary.
So, well, you're out in the Bob Graham round route for 8,000 feet. I think that was 6 hours on the fell. So yeah, that pretty much took care of that. So yeah, all in 2 quality sessions, a massive day on the fells, lots of elevation, all my strength and conditioning. I reckon that's a gold star that week.
That is a definite gold star. I've only done 1 strength and conditioning session this week, and it absolutely destroyed me. I think I researched like good strength exercises to do to strengthen for carrying the pack. I'm already there,
great.
Gary.
Yeah.
I'm already there. I was having a look, and I do a lot of them anyway. So I was like, yeah, that's. But I went to the gym and got a bit carried away. I'm so lucky. So we have this amazing new gym in Morzine, and nobody. I literally have the place to myself.
I saw that. Yeah, you're on your own.
So lucky. And so I set out my what I'm going to do, and I often go with a mate because it's just better like that, isn't it? And and then if someone arrives, we're both like, oh, what this is like, and then we have to stop the chat and start. But I've already started thinking, okay, let's looking at that strength work. But I did it yesterday. I went a bit hard, and my forearms are really sore. How much use they're going to be.
Forearms, yeah.
Well, you think you're going to be doing this for 268 miles with the poles.
Yeah.
You've got to be the upper body. You want to be as strong as my legs. Well, let's see. I'm going to turn up at the start line.
Like hench.
Right, let's talk about race results. You found some crackers.
Ooh.
The Maverick Adidas Terex Original West Sussex 2022 at 22 kilometres. 1 hour 37. Stephen Fabs, Vet 40, love it. 1 hour 51. Claudia Marks.
Then we have the last one standing, Castle Ward 2022. Keith Russell took the win, 37 loops in a total of 154 miles. It was a stacked field as well, wasn't it? There was lots of...
I had a few mates over there racing, and so I had some live WhatsApp updates, and it looked like the weather started off quite nice, and then it became horrendous, bit of a bugfest. And I think a lot of people then called it a day when it was literally...
I don't know where... Obviously, 154 miles is immense, but I don't know where that stands up in one of these last man standing as far as being close to a record or not. But either way, well done, Keith Russell. And then we're all the way over to Oklahoma. It's our first overseas results. Well, maybe some French and European stuff, but definitely the States. Outlaw 100 mile. I'm pretty sure it's 100 mile. And thanks to Carolyn Holloway for sharing that with us. And Molly Herford took the win, 23 hours, 53 minutes and 42 seconds. It's always that. It's always...
she worked hard for that. Can you imagine how hard she worked for that sub 20?
Oh, goodness me. But for a lot of people, the sub 24, so many people just want to complete 100 mile. Wow, it's never a given, but a sub 24 is a big goal for a lot of people. So well done, Molly. And then Matthew Moore or Moore. I would always say Moore, but...
Yeah, you did. You would.
27 hours, 49 minutes and 7 seconds. We're crying about the weather. I wonder what it was like in Oklahoma this time of year.
Oklahoma, where the wind comes whistling through the trees. Would it be snowy? Well, I have no idea.
I don't know. I should check it out. Yeah, should have checked it out. Bad research, Gary.
This week, we caught up again with Brodie from the Run Smarter podcast and Instagram handle Run Smarter series. If you don't follow him on the gram, do. It's so worthwhile. He puts out something every few days, a little golden nugget of some strength work or a little pictogram of ideas for becoming a stronger or bulletproof runner. So we put some questions on Facebook quite a little while ago. We were going to talk with him in January, but I got the vid, didn't I? And so we had to postpone that for a little bit. Yeah. So we tried to work through as many of your questions, or if we couldn't manage to ask your questions, we sort of tried to merge it into one question. And of course, being me and Gary, we sort of diverged off the topic and tried to turn it around to us as well as much as possible so we could get some free advice. But he was as always, full of lots of little ideas, lots of things that you can do to prevent injury, or also if you've got an injury, and as always, so positive as well. So enjoy our chat with Brodie Down Under from the Run Smarter series.
We have another returning guest, Eddie. This is we've got a little trend actually, Brodie. Now we had Andy Dobinson, we had Russell Bentley, who we had over 2 shows, and then you are a returning guest too. It's brilliant. Welcome to the podcast again, Brodie. How are you? Where are you? And have you been for a run today?
Thank you for the second invite. That means I must have done something well the first time. Yes, I'm Brodie. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. And today is actually my rest day. It's my run tomorrow. So I've done my strength training today.
Oh, that's interesting that you do your strength training on a rest day, because you don't have a total rest day.
I have to take a total rest day once a week, but I'll slot in maybe 2 or 3 strength days throughout the week. And when I say rest day, kind of like a running rest day, and then I fill my time out elsewhere.
Yeah, I get it, because I often have clients ask, like, can I put my strength in my rest? And I'm like, no, you have a total rest day once a week, and it's better to put your strength. It's better to load the other day and then have that total day off. Otherwise, you put your strength in and it's not a rest day anymore.
Very sensible, Eddie. Well done.
It's an excellent start.
It is a minefield. I probably don't do my strength sessions after a hard session, but quite often I hear, do your hard session and then do your strength. But I just do.
It depends what you want to get out of it as well. Like if it's core, a strength, mobility, you're probably all right. But I know if I've done a hard session, I've put my money in the bank there. I'm not going to put money in the bank anywhere else that day. I'm just going to be standing at the fridge going,
Now, we asked you if you've been for a run today. I've not been for a run today, but I'm just curious, and Eddie's curious too, is there any anecdotal or actually physical evidence of, I suppose, are people more prone to injury if they run AM or PM?
It's a good question. I haven't come across any of it. What I would say on the topic is some people, just in general, some people are morning people. Some people just need a little bit more time to get up and move around. And you all know who you are. And I guess it wouldn't necessarily increase your risk of injury, but you'd probably thrive a little bit more if you're exercising more towards your circadian rhythms. And I guess people have naturally, whether they're on their work schedule or something, but if they had the luxury and they had a weekend or all free, they tend to naturally gravitate towards a time of the day that they'd naturally thrive. Like my sister always does afternoons and evenings, whereas I'm a morning person, always a run in the morning. I don't think I've ever run in the evening. So I think people just naturally gravitate towards that just based on their own, if they had no prior commitments, I think they would just naturally find a time of the day they'd thrive in.
Brodie, what have you been up to since we last chatted? You just moved house, and you were like half soundproofed your walls.
Yes,
it looks really smart now where you are.
Very good audio.
I have. Thank you. I've worked hard to try and minimize the bounce because I had moved to a new house. Yes, I'm still here, and I've converted my entire ground level into a clinic/gym rehab studio. So the 3 years prior to that was just doing online physio for runners all over the world. Still do that. It's the bulk of what I do, but starting to see some local in-person people as well with this new clinic that I have built out. So it's really lovely. Yeah. And apart from that, loving the podcast, continuing the podcast and putting together a book. I'm just constantly on the go with trying to get as much information out there through all different mediums and trying to do it in the best way I can. And that's the mission that gives me as much passion as possible. And so try and do it as much as possible.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about the book, actually. I heard on your podcast that you were doing a book and it's evolving. I think maybe 3 books now, is it, or something, or 3 sections within the book?
It's a project that I am not too sure how long it will take. I've probably I've committed the last 4 months to it so far and not too sure how long it's taking because I have the idea of how much content I want. And so when I start chipping away at that content, I'm thinking of more ideas to put in the book. So the more I work on it, the bigger my to-do list is getting. So I have no idea how long it's going to take. But when I very first started the podcast, I wrote an ebook around injury-prone Pete and 10 universal principles to reduce risk of injury or overcome your current injury. And that stemmed the podcast. The first 10 episodes of the podcast were describing each of those principles in detail. And it was just a quick little ebook that I thought would be nice to put out there. And since thought I should probably fully flesh that out and delve a little bit more deeper. But then runners also, they want to reduce their risk of injury. That's like the number one desire or need that they have. But most of them also want to increase their running performance safely. So I have the idea to do a second part and have more principles on how to increase your running performance safely. And then a couple of other ideas around like injury specific ideas and how someone can overcome an injury specifically, and a few other tidbits around. So it's a big project I've got at the moment, but hopefully.
Brodie. When do you call time on that? You'd be like,
yeah, I'm busy. But like I always say that if you do things that generate your energy, then you're just full of passion the entire time. You never get drained, you never get burnt out, just because you just love every single moment. So I don't know, I haven't been burnt out yet. And I do work hard. I spend a lot of hours into it, but I'm still going.
It reminds me, I tried one of your strength, you do little snippets of good ideas for strength training. And I was in the gym with a mate the other day and I was like, look, let's try this, jump off the box and then jump back on again. And I was like, look, here we are. I showed her on Instagram. Oh my God, the next day, my God. We chose like the two big boxes, being competitive girls. We're like, we'll be fine. It was good. It was a good little strength workout. So if you're ever looking for little tidbits of little extra things to do, Brodie often puts up little ideas of strengthening exercises on his Instagram, and then I steal them.
Thanks for the plug. Yeah. And the good thing about my job is I just need to do like maybe 3 reps of one exercise, and I try and nail it perfectly and then say, here's the exercise. Now you do 3 sets of 15 or something. And, they have to do the whole thing. Whereas I just do 10 seconds.
You make it look so good. I was like, that is like perfect form. Whereas when I'd done like 4 of them and I was like, one leg was definitely leading the jump back up going, it didn't look like
For sure.
Right, should we get into our first question, proper question?
Well, I was super curious. You mentioned injury prone Pete, and I think last podcast we brought injury prone Pete up. Yeah, I'd love to know a bit more about injury prone Pete.
The idea, like the premise, I could probably sum up the idea of the book in about 2-3 minutes. But if you want to know more information, feel free to listen to those podcast episodes or grab the ebook. But essentially what it is injury prone Pete just decides to become a runner. He's in his like mid-30s and decides just to partake, and encounters a lot of setbacks, encounters a lot of injuries, and learns a lot of things along the way about reducing risk of injury and overcoming injury. And essentially it's around, for the most part, the idea around why injuries occur in the first place. And most of the time it's due to something abrupt in training. It's due to every like kind of body part, structure, muscle, ligament, tendon having a certain capacity, and there being a shift in your training that exceeds its capacity, exceeds its ability to tolerate what you want it to do. And because a lot of load goes through your body when you run, a lot of load generates per body weight. So around the foot, you're looking at something around 6 to 8 times your body weight, around the knee, 2 to 3 times your body weight, every single step that you take. So the loads accumulate very quickly. And if you do something, if there's an abrupt change, whether it's speed, terrain, mileage, if there's footwear that's too abrupt in change, all those sorts of things, if it's way too outside the norm and it exceeds your capacity to adapt, then it starts breaking down rather than building up. And there's a few other tidbits in there. You could have constant training, but you overload yourself because you've under recovered. So there's that balance to the equation as well that you need to go through. But the rest of the journey talks about strength training. It talks about shoes. It talks about nutrition and all those sorts of things that you really want to do to recover and also perform, and how to do so safely.
Do you think that also applies? Here quite often you see someone doing a marathon, for argument's sake. I was on for a PB into the 20 miles and then I cramped up. Is that maybe an outlet for the body saying you've just asked too much today, or it's just rotten luck?
Yeah, if it comes to like cramping, sometimes it's like pushing beyond your capabilities and the body's just not used to it. But often when you push your body beyond what it's used to, you also sweat a lot more. You also lose a lot more hydration. And if your nutrition strategy and your hydration strategy isn't up to scratch, then that's also a likely cause of cramping. So there's a few things that could go wrong. We know that there's 2 main areas of cramping. One, it could just be overuse over and over and over again. That's why someone might get a cramp in their feet when they go swimming and just start using their intrinsic muscles.
Horrible, isn't that? Oh, and you're holding onto the lane rope saying, I'm not drowning, but I can't move. I used to do like a 4-hour bike back in the triathlon days, and then a swim club swim in the evening, and you'd kick your leg and you'd feel it go, and it's awful. It's awful, but all down to poor nutrition. You're right, Brodie.
Well, that's the one side of things. One side's poor nutrition and hydration. The other, because people can get, say, cramps in their feet when they're just sleeping, and it's just because they're pointed their toes down and they're not sweating, but it's just the muscles overuse. They're not used to sort of activating those little muscles for long periods of time. But yes, definitely the other cause of cramping is that loss of electrolytes or loss of sodium in sweat. And trying to replace that as much as possible, which sometimes people just get their strategy wrong because they push themselves in the marathon and they haven't necessarily trained at that intensity, and so don't know how to replace their fluids accordingly. So yeah, certain things can go wrong.
Getting carried away, that should be a chapter in your book. Getting carried away.
We reached out to our listeners on Facebook, and they came back at us with quite a few questions, actually, and we'll try and answer as many as possible.
Some of them we've sort of merged, haven't we, and sort of gone to that's been asked a lot. So if your specific question isn't asked, it's because we've sort of tried to merge in as many. And also we're aware that Brodie is giving up his time, so we can't be here all day. Right, you're going to go first, Gary.
Yeah, first one from Tracker Teddy is a middle-aged runner, currently in the middle of a very long injury. 6 weeks with no running, with the MRI planned, possible tib stress fracture, biking aggravated. And I suppose basically they are curious if, I suppose, somebody who's got a long-term injury, if they will ever get back to where they were as a runner.
Good question. I can definitely see people who do have severe injuries. It can seem like, the possibility of full recovery is low. People get in these mental states where they're conflicted and they're like, oh, will it ever happen? It's every time I build myself up, I get another injury and then I'm set back as well. And stress fractures are just the worst injury when it comes to runners. People hate when it comes to stress fractures because unlike most other injuries, stress fractures tend to be the exception to a lot of the management rules. And I do advise a lot of these management rules on my podcast because sometimes it's okay to poke into a little bit of pain. Sometimes it's okay to exercise and do a little bit of running if there's low levels of pain there and if it doesn't flare up the next day. Like there's certain guidelines, certain principles that you can follow. But usually stress fractures are the exception to the rule because it is non-weight bearing, it's time off. It's once you start resuming back to your exercise, you kind of need to be pain-free the entire time. So it's very slow and the runner needs to be very patient, which a lot of runners don't have. And it can be very, very frustrating, but I'm yet to see if the management if you abide to that management very carefully, yet to see a stress fracture runner who hasn't returned back to their normal kind of loads or goals that they have. But the caveat of that is you do need to pay attention to the right management. You can mismanage an injury for as long as you want, and you just won't return back to those goals that you once had, only just because you're self-sabotaging and not abiding to what should be done. But a lot of times our ego gets in the way, or whether it's just frustration, or whether it's just you love running so much that you just have to get back and do as much as possible. Sometimes those training philosophies are just keep us in that really bad boom bust cycle. And so that can definitely happen, but rest assured, to allay your fears, if you abide by the right management, then you should return back to the running dosage, the running goals that you set for yourself.
I think with a stress fracture, when I had my foot stress fracture, the best thing my doctor did was put me in a boot and go, if I see you doing anything out of that boot, you're going to be in big trouble. But I think with a stress fracture, Brodie, I don't know whether you agree, but the healing time, like other injuries, you can often do lots of a cross train and stuff. That healing time with the stress fracture is you have to do nothing because it just won't heal. Otherwise, every time you use it, you're sending the wrong message to the body. But the minute it's healed, it's actually quite easy to then build back up because it's healed. Whereas with other injuries, they are very hard. Like, I like the word mismanagement, because you can often think, like with calf injuries and knees, oh, it's better. And then people go back too soon. And that's when the injury cycle just continues because they're mismanaging it. So in some ways, a stress fracture is horrible because that initial period has to be total rest. But then once they're healing, they're almost easier to come back to because they're nearly always healed. And you just have to manage other bits and build yourself back up. Do you agree with that, Brodie?
Yeah. The only thing with so much time off, it might be 6 weeks of non-weight bearing, but then when you get back into stuff, that is all the rest of your body, all the rest of your lower limb have kind of been a little bit weak as well, and they've kind of had complete rest. So the slow integration back into exercise is the case. And when you're talking about like healing times, stress fractures happen in several different parts of your body as a runner. It could be in the foot, the ankle, the shin, could be in the femur, could be high up in the hip, around the pelvis. There's so many different areas that runners seem to accumulate, and some are more common than others, but some sites are more what we call high risk and some are low risk. And so we manage those very differently. So if you're talking about your shin, if there's a stress fracture on the outside border of your shin, there's actually a high risk zone, but on the inside of the shin is actually a low risk zone. So the management will be extremely different, and they usually have a high risk. It's usually a high risk. If you make it worse, then there's added complications and there's added things that we really don't want to have to manage. And so that's why they take the advice a lot more seriously. And sometimes it's no cross training or non-weight bearing for sometimes 8 to 12 weeks, is because it's such a site that you just don't want to get worse. But if it's on a low risk area, then maybe sometimes you can cross train. Maybe sometimes you can do like swimming or a bike if it's really low load. Maybe that the assault bikes where you're kind of using a lot of your arms and a little bit less of your legs, but that would just depend on symptoms as well. And not only the site of the location, but also the severity, because it all comes on different stages. You can have a stage 3 or a stage 1, and it's all on a spectrum in terms of where it develops and what the pathology is. And so don't follow my just general advice. You need to follow what the site is, what the stage of the pathology is, and then just listen to the health professional who's assessed it and is in charge of your management.
It's very hard with stress fractures too. I don't know what the medical care is like in Australia, but getting an MRI to actually get a stress fracture diagnosed is often an uphill battle unless you're prepared to throw money at it. But and I often think once it's actually diagnosed, often runners have gone through weeks or months of like reoccurring pain and it's not been diagnosed properly. So fingers crossed, Teddy, by the time that's being we've been talking about that, you might be on the road to recovery. Let us know.
Right, Teddy's been running for 25 years, but do you see newer runners, or just my experiment of one in myself, when I was seeing early in my running life, I seem to have a lot more injuries, and now not so many injuries. Is that a kind of common pattern?
You're probably just more wise, Gary, and just doing less silly things. And you're probably learning from your mistakes. There is a lot of research out there around characteristics or like any sort of correlation between running related injuries. Unfortunately, there's not high correlation between age, between like experience, between like your mileage, your frequency, your intensity. Whenever there's a study put out there that says, oh, there's a correlation between the amount of miles you do per week, there's usually another paper that comes out and says there's no correlation. And so I've just finished doing a patron episode on a systematic review that came out last year around training parameters. Is there any link between training parameters and running related injuries? And they looked at how much mileage you do throughout the week. They looked at how frequent you are, what the intensity is like, and they looked at changes and all these sort of things. And essentially they found out that injuries are so multifactorial that there's always going to be conflicting kind of research, and depends on how strong the study is. But they say all of these papers say that the more mileage you do, the higher the risk of getting injury. And then there's a whole bunch of other papers that come out and say the more mileage you do is actually protective against injury. And so it just leaves you with so much confusion. And you're just left with all these systematic reviews that say inconclusive. Like we can't actually draw any correlation. And so it makes us very confused.
Listen to your body. Just listen to your body and don't copy.
Agreed.
Let's dive into the next question. This came up from Martin Colburn and my friend Hilary as well, who I actually train with quite a lot, and she's always going over on her ankle or whining about it. So I'd love to be able to help her out here a bit. Reoccurring ankle twisting on trail. Anyone that's ever twisted, oh, it's horrible, isn't it? It's almost sick making, that twisting pain. But it tends to be once you've done it once, it's gone, and then it happens again and then again.
And again, yeah.
Any tips? Any advice on this? Help these poor people.
I'll try as best as I can, because yes, I agree that like once you roll your ankle, you lose, say like the ligaments get stretched a little bit, but also you lose proprioception, is like the nerve connection to your ankle, from your brain to your ankle, to tell you where your ankle is in space. And so a lot of people return back to running because most ankle sprains, you can overcome it in about a week or two. And most people, without any real effective management, they're just walking again, and then all of a sudden they're running again, and then they've just gone back without addressing the strength deficits or the proprioception deficits or the balance deficits that are associated with rolling the ankle, and leads them to rolling their ankle again. Like I played basketball throughout my teens and early 20s. I've rolled both my ankles about 5 times, because it is just like, once you do it once, if you don't have and commit to some good rehab, significantly higher chance of rolling them again. And especially if you're on trails, and you know, if it's almost like, because there's such an uneven surface, if you're looking ahead of you and you're not staring at your feet, if that rolled ankle that's been rolled in the past, if it's just in a slight different position to what your body thinks it is, and then you land on a uneven surface that you might not have been prepared for, the results for you to sort of stabilize is quite low. And so you roll it again. And so trying to identify those deficits, yes, some strength exercises, yes, some balance exercises. Wobble board exercises are perfect for runners if they want to reduce their risk of ankle sprains. And it's just essentially standing with one foot in the middle of the wobble board, trying to keep all sides off the floor, and just trying to balance. And your foot works really hard, your ankle works really hard. Then you can do it with eyes closed. You can do it with like holding onto a kettlebell and like shifting it from right hand to left hand, and just trying to negotiate that change in your center of gravity. And you're just working super, super hard. And then it just comes down to making sure when you're on the trails, which a lot of people can, if you've got a lot of practice, is just trying to work out your foot placement, trying to have real conscious effort about where you place your feet. And that can significantly reduce the risk of rolling it over again as well.
Did you say 1 foot on the wobble board?
You have to do 1 foot, unfortunately.
I brush my teeth standing on one leg. Should I? It's like a minute on each foot. Should I take the wobble board into the bathroom and
you can do. That'll be quite the challenge. Yes, I do say for those who are really struggling.
When he's watching the Six Nations, he watches the rugby every weekend, and he spends the whole time on the wobble board shouting at the television.
That's good multitasking.
I like that. Yeah.
I was going to say, if someone's finding the single leg wobble board like unachievable, if they're falling over within like seconds and not really getting much of a workout, I always recommend just putting fingertips on the wall, and that can be really, really helpful. And if you find yourself, once you start losing balance, that other foot that's dangling in the air, if that makes contact with the ground, then you're just taking this like little mini rest. So it just defeats the purpose. And so trying your best once you do fall to keep your foot on the wobble board, keep the other foot in the air, and then trying to use the strength of your foot to bring you back up. So all sides are now off and you're just working extremely hard.
I like that little touching out, little tapping out. Indeed, I noticed on your social media you shared a post about strong feet in running. I'm not too sure if the feet, I suppose the feet and the ankles are connected, but yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Do we need strong feet? And if we do, some advice, some tips and possible exercises?
Yeah, it's fresh on my mind. I just interviewed Jay DeSherry on my podcast, which that episode, at the time of recording this, it comes out next week. And we talked about strength training. We talked about strength of the feet. We talked about function and coordination. And Jay's advice, he's wrote books on these, so he's mainly the expert. starting off with toe yoga as a coordination exercise. You guys are nodding your heads. You're probably familiar with what it is, but essentially just planting your foot flat on the ground and trying to raise the big toe, only the big toe, and trying to keep the other 4 toes just pressed into the ground. And then you're doing the opposite. So you're placing the big toe down and raising up all other 4 toes and just coordinating those 2. Yes. And people get quite good at it once they practice. But if they haven't done it before, it's very difficult to do. And with enough practice, Jay said usually within a week, which I've seen mainly within 2 weeks, people they're able to coordinate themselves. They're able to achieve a better function of their foot. They're able to activate the intrinsic muscles within the feet. And then once that's achieved, they can then build upon that layer, build upon that foundation, and work their way more towards strength and loading, which can be as simplistic as just doing your strength work in bare feet, walking around in bare feet a bit more, maybe minimalist footwear during your workouts when you're doing your squats and lunges and all those sorts of things. Just builds up the strength and function of the feet.
How do you feel about strength work in bare feet, Brodie?
Good once you've built up the strength to tolerate it. So some people may have just been working out in really supportive shoes or ran in supportive shoes their entire life and hadn't really done much experience in bare feet apart from just walking around the house. And if they're not necessarily had much practice, then it's probably going to be a little bit too much for them. So you want to make sure that if their goal is to build the strength and function of their feet, which all runners should, then slowly get into it. Maybe it's only doing barefoot walking for certain exercises, or maybe it's only for 5 or 10 minutes of your workout, or maybe it's just for one set. But eventually progressing to the point where your feet are strong enough to tolerate that whole strength session, provided that you're safe. You don't want to drop weights on your feet, or you don't want to, there's hygiene as an issue if you're in like a commercial gym, but it should be the goal. In my mind, you should have the strength and function for you to not rely on supportive shoes when it comes to exercise or when it comes to strength training. I think running is a different story. I don't think a lot of people really thrive very well if they try barefoot running. Some of them do. There are exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, you're sort of balancing on a very, very fine line between injury and overloading yourself. Because like I say, when you run 6 to 8 times your body weight through your foot, it'd be very easy to overload it no matter how strong you are. All it takes is just a slight fluctuation in training and then game over.
I think as well, if you're doing strength work at home, perhaps you don't have access to a gym and a lot of weights and stuff, just doing the same exercise but without trainers on can completely change your proprioception and the way that you can do that exercise. So it's quite good if people are finding exercises quite easy at home, just take your shoes off and try and do it without shoes on, and suddenly it can seem a lot harder. Not speaking from too much experience here, but I know.
No, you're right though, for sure.
As soon as I take my shoes off and I do Bosu ball work and I do my just normal step ups with dumbbell, I find it suddenly, but I also find it kind of wakes up. So often now I've done a ton of strength work, so I'll do my stability and long warm up before my heavy weights. I'll do that without my trainers on, and I feel it really wakes my feet up. But then I put my trainers on for the heavy weights because I'd be too scared to lift without trainers.
I always, as soon as I'm in the house, the footwear comes off. And when I do my calf raises, they're always barefoot. And I feel I've engaged more of the foot, I suppose. Again, it's anecdotal. I'm not a scientist, but I do feel the foot's more involved in the exercise as opposed to the kind of barrier between the shoe and the step.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's just taking away support. And so your body has to be that support. And it's... people don't necessarily think about footwear like that. They think, I have flat feet, so I need this support on the inside of my foot. But you're taking away function. You're taking away the possibility of adding in strength to those little muscles of the feet.
Right, let's dig in. Shall I do the next question?
Yeah, go for it.
Victoria Magnus. She's got many questions. We'll try maybe... She's just had recovery tips from motor neuroma's excision, isn't it? And she's still got nerve damage. What is, Brodie, what's your sort of experience with motor neuroma and then having the operation and then the recovery?
To be fair, I haven't dealt with too many people that have had an operation, had the excision of the nerve. So Morton's neuroma is, so in between the heads of all of your toes, you have bones, and it's in between those bones where you have nerves. And sometimes if the foot or there's two kind of met heads at the base of the toes, if they kind of squash together, they kind of push and squish the nerve that's sort of in between them. And that can get very irritated. And Morton's neuroma is between the between the third and fourth toe. And that can usually be if the foot is like kind of squashed together. And in runners, I kind of see it's common if they have either wrong sized footwear. So if the toe box of the shoe is a little bit smaller, or if someone's running an ultra and they haven't been wearing a shoe size that's a half size larger than their actual foot, because their foot gets bigger during that event. So if their toe box is too small, then those met heads, the toes kind of get squashed together and can irritate that nerve. Or someone who has a narrow or crossover step width. So if someone does that, then they're reaching across their body, they're reaching across the midline to make contact with the ground.
Yeah, never
and
heard
so
that.
if you can imagine, like you're running on a treadmill, there's a straight line down the very center of that belt, and your right foot makes contact on the left side of that line, then you the foot itself is kind of cutting across, and when you make contact with the ground, it kind of crushes all the bones of your feet, and sometimes that can crush the nerve as well. And so if you have a narrow step width or a crossover step width, then it's helpful to try and widen that step width if you're particularly dealing with this Morton's neuroma. And so with this particular presentation, someone who's had the nerve itself removed and is still experiencing some sort of nerve pain, I would question kind of like the running, question the footwear, question like the style of running, maybe just a better management. Really hard to say we need to delve into sort of particulars and little like intrinsic parts of the rehab, but that would usually be my tip. Most cases, I just have people walk around with like spaces in their toes, just like when they're walking around the house, they just have space and just like separate the space a little bit more. But then when it comes to running, appropriate footwear, large toe boxes, and then widening their step width can usually be effective.
That's really interesting.
Try that out. Reoccurring plantar fasciitis. If you've had plantar fasciitis, I did have it many years ago once.
Never ever had it.
And actually, that's why I had my third baby. I couldn't get rid of it. We wanted to have a third. We were like, let's just have this. Should we have it now? Because I can't get rid of this plantar fasciitis. So that'll be the rest. Reoccurring plantar fasciitis. This must be some of the beef of your work, is it, Brodie? The people. It's an absolute B if you get it. Getting rid of it.
Yeah. It's one of two conditions in runners that I mainly see that kind of doesn't resolve itself if you mismanage it enough. It kind of just persists. It can persist for months, sometimes years. And if you don't know how to effectively overcome it, the longer you've had it for, the harder it is to get rid of, because sometimes the irritant carries over into everyday life, and so then it becomes particularly tricky. So
it's like an annoying boyfriend, you just cannot get rid of it.
Yeah, it can carry over. Let's just say like the running itself was the main irritant, so doing too much, and then once it is irritated for several months, then carries over into your walking, like throughout the rest of the day. If you have to stand for long periods of time, if you have to carry the kids or do grocery shopping and you're carrying bags or like those sort of things, if you walk around the house barefoot for half an hour, sometimes that can set it off and starts to carry over into more and more things throughout your everyday life. And it follows a particular pattern, what I see, what I call the pain, rest, weakness, downward spiral. It's someone having pain because they've overdone themselves. Maybe they've had an abrupt change in their training, in their overall training loads, and they have plantar fasciitis and they say, all right, I need time off, I need to rest. And what that does is reduce its capacity, reduce its strength. And then you try and return back to all those things and it irritates it further. And you say, okay, maybe I'm not a half marathon person. Maybe I'm only a 10K person. And then they reduce their overall mileage and it still irritates. And they say, okay, maybe just 5K. Okay, maybe just 1K. Maybe I'm just not equipped for running just yet. And then it carries over into their walking. It's like, oh, maybe I can't walk for 2 hours anymore. Maybe I have to wear all these rigid type of shoes because I need that support. Otherwise my foot's sore. Or maybe I need orthotics because that makes me feel so much better because I no longer need the demand in the feet. And so you're listening to these people and just you're looking over the period of months and they're just getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and their capacity to stand and their capacity to walk and run and do all these things is just diminishing. And so then that's usually when they find a physio, when they've had it for 6 months and they can't walk for 10 minutes. And then they're like, fix me because I have a marathon that I want to do in 6 months. It can be particularly tricky. It can be very frustrating. But what we need to do is to try and find where their current capacity is, what they can tolerate. Is it 5 minutes of barefoot walking? Is it doing calf raises with some sort of supportive shoes? Is it doing some sort of toe yoga or some sort of wobble board stuff, or trying just to build up the capacity in whatever capacity they can currently tolerate? Because it depends how far down that spiral they are, is where our starting point is. And when we find that starting point, then we need to slowly build our way back up. And it might just be balance to start with, or it might just be we've caught it early enough and it just might be a slight altercation or modification of their current training loads. So it just might be, okay, you overdid yourself last week. You ran a half marathon, you had a very impressive time, but now your foot's sore. Let's just back off a little bit. Let's do some cross training. Let's do some strength training. Let's halve your current running mileage. Let's slowly build our way back up. So you can catch it early, but more often than not, I see people that are had a lot longer, and it's just trying to restore function, trying to restore capacity like we do with most other injuries.
Yeah, it's great tips. Find what you can tolerate is brilliant. There's usually something you can do. Next one on the list, Victoria again, knee pain. Twinges when going up and down stairs, didn't respond to 3 months rest. She's thinking ligament pain, physio soon. Runners, my goodness me, seems like everybody has experienced knee pain in some form over the years. I think I had it's undiagnosed, but I'm pretty sure it was a meniscus tear. And that I just had to walk. I really couldn't run on it. But yeah, help for Victoria, not me.
Sure, Victoria, yes. Let's see what we can do. First of all, you said that rest didn't help. Often we find that's the case, yeah. I have an episode in those 10 universal principles I was talking about at the start, which is rest is not always best. And essentially talking about our discussion 60 seconds ago was we need to find capacity. We need to find your current capacity and build you up from there, because often rest results in further weakening and more irritation. And so you're actually detrimental to a lot of your recovery in a lot of instances. Stress fractures, no, like we say, exception to the rule. But in most cases, we try and find our current capacity and build our way up from there. The most common knee condition for runners is what we call patellofemoral pain. It's also referred to as runner's knee, and does have pain with up and down stairs, with squats, with lunges. Very, very common. So potentially it could be, I'm not here to diagnose people, but the other thing it could be, if it's at the front of the knee, could be a patellar ligament. So the patellar ligament just at the very front, just below the kneecap, if that's an irritant. But it's all about finding capacity, all about finding what you can currently tolerate. If it's no running at all, then it might be wall sits, it might be wall squats, it might be some light lunges, it might be just holding onto some weights and slowly going up and down stairs. And a helpful tip for a lot of people that a lot of runners don't realize is their strength work. When they do their rehab, there can be a little bit of pain during that rehab. I found particularly with patellofemoral pain or runner's knee, pain up to around about 4 out of 10 can be very effective. It means that you're progressing your rehab a lot quicker than if you were trying to be really conservative and go with pain-free exercises completely. But there's a few caveats to that. We don't want any further irritation after that exercise. We don't want it aching and being sore for an hour after that exercise. And we don't want it being irritated the next day. So it needs to return to baseline. We call that in less than 24 hours. But if you do an exercise, if you're holding onto some weights and you're doing, say, wall squats, and it's maybe a 2 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10 pain, sometimes that's okay. And as long as it doesn't irritate the following day, you can continue with that dosage. And so you're progressing your strength a lot quicker than you would have if you're trying to aim for pain-free exercises.
Knees are quite noisy, aren't they? I always find that with clients that I'm like, knees like to shout. They're often like, oh, really? And I'm like, just let you know, but they respond really well to being told what to do as well. They're like, if you just make them do the strength work. And yeah, like you say, I often say, just if it's not getting worse, that's good. Sometimes needs need to be told slightly what they're going to do, and they need to suck it up a bit. Not obviously to any pain, but sometimes I often find, especially if I get really sore knees from the sort of sports that I do, especially in the winter, but I find movement helps them to say, loosen up a bit. You got to work, get on with it. And
I think it's great advice though. Find what you can tolerate without aggravating these problems too much. When I had my knee issue, I did check my Strava once, and I think it was about 2 or 3 months. I had pretty much no running, and I walked all that time. I did increase my strength and conditioning, and it was quite a low point mentally. So the runners out there bumping into friends out on the trails, and I was walking everywhere. But Victoria, there was light at the end of the tunnel, and that was 2018, and there was a period of time when I was really fearful of aggravating that injury, and then now I don't really think about it anymore. So yeah,
funny, isn't it? When you're injured, it's like you're in the depths of it and you're so scared of it, and then it sort of dissipates eventually, and then you forget about it. Though at the time, it's all consuming.
I turned off the Strava. That went.
Turn off as soon as you get in, go turn off the Strava.
Well, I hope that helps, Victoria, and everybody else. Right. Now. The quick five.
Brodie, we've upped our game with this quick five since you last chat. We've become a lot more professional. I don't know if you've noticed, but we've got.
I don't know if I like being professional.
Brodie, thank you so much for giving everything you say is like a little nugget of golden goodness that I'm like, yes, write that down. So hopefully people listening they're either there in the depth of an injury. Perhaps you're listening to this at home and you can't get out and you're sitting with a cup of tea, or perhaps you're out on the trail and you've got a bit of a niggle. So hopefully this has given you maybe a little bit of point in the right direction, or just a timely reminder that strength work is the key to maintaining a healthy relationship with your running. And of course, if you want to find Brodie, you just need to type Run Smarter, the Run Smarter podcast into Google, and you can find all about him and listen to his podcast every no minute wasted listening to this podcast. Every little, it's a great source of information. So thank you again, Brodie. I'm sure we'll ask you again, but we'll give you a few months off.
I just listened to the last podcast I listened to was, oh my goodness, the Nordic exercise. I think you had a physio from Ireland on. I was really interested in that because although it seemed quite sprint based and explosive athletes, when you were mentioning about the uphill and downhill running, I thought, might be spending some euros. But
yes,
every day is a school day. You listen to Brodie. Every day is a school day.
That's great. Quick 5 questions then. Like Eddie said, we've upped our game. We reached out to our listeners in the competition. So I've moved away from giant fiberglass structures in Australia and stuff like that.
I saw that from last time. I remembered that one.
But we've got some fresh questions for you. I didn't email those over to you, so you haven't had time to prep for these ones. First one is, right, you're coming from a muddy trail run. Do you leave your shoes to rot or would you clean them?
Oh, God. I'd probably wait for them to dry and then try and just clap off all the dry dirt rather than just dealing with the mud. I think that's probably, much to the dislike of my girlfriend, I'd probably just leave them either inside the house or just outside the house, just wait for them to dry.
Who cleans them? Who's got that time? I bet you do.
We had Matt from Hawker on. I'm pretty sure he cleans his trainers because my trainers would perish and he was dragging out shoes he'd had for years and years and they look pretty good. So I think there's some longevity, good longevity advice if you clean shoes. But yeah, I don't. When we cross-country season starts again, I drag out last year's shoes and they're just caked in mud. It's such embarrassing. Right,
you're out in Australia, is there anyway? It's just sand, beaches.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, picturesque.
You're out on a run, you take a picture. Would you go for a selfie shot or would you take a picture of the scenery?
Definitely the scenery. I've kind of got into this this little groove whenever my girlfriend and I go on a weekend getaway and I go for a long run. I'm taking in all the scenery as soon as I see like a field and some cows or like the sun, the sunrise, all that sort of stuff, taking in it because my girlfriend really appreciates it. So I'm not featured in any of those. So I can, I have evidence to back up my claims.
You know, Instagram, I did a little bit of, again, it's just my little research. When I look through my Instagram feed, anything with a face on, people tend to like more. So that encourages you to do these selfies. But it's a pet hate of mine is this lovely view, but my big face in front of the view. Beach holiday, city break, or head for the bush?
Definitely bush. Definitely need to get out into nature, get some birds singing in the morning, get some like river crossings, all that sort of stuff. Absolutely love it. Have you entered any races for 2022? I actually have entered a bike race. We have a Great Ocean Road 145K, just lovely, scenic, but challenging ride coming up. So I've had to actually reduce my running mileage and start picking up my cycling. So something a bit different, probably something you're not used to hearing on the podcast. Awesome. That sounds awesome.
We're big fans of the bike, aren't we, Gary?
Last question. Yes, massive. Oh, I've not done my Zwift this week, Eddie, or last week. I know. I'll have a chat about that later.
It's going down.
Would you say David Bowie or David Bowie?
David Bowie. Do you guys say? How do you guys say it? I've never heard the other.
I'm a Bowie.
I'm a Bowie.
I'm not. To be fair, I should have really checked this. I don't know how he would have said it. Yeah. I should. There's bound to be a YouTube video on that one. Oh, boys, 3 boys. That's brilliant. That's it. Quick 5. Thanks, Brodie.
Oh, thank God.
You were very succinct, Brodie. We could have done 10.
That was awesome, Brodie. Thanks again for coming on. Our second guest. Definitely head over to Run Smart Online, everybody. Check out Brodie. He's got a great podcast too. And we'll keep our eyes peeled for the book. And yeah, I'm sure we'll get you on again, have a chat about the book when it's published. That will be awesome. Thanks, Brodie.
Thank you, Brodie.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Had a lot of fun.
Great to hear from Brodie again, Eddie. I can't wait for his book. It sounds like a life's work, the way it's just evolving, and who knows when it's going to be finished. But yeah, once it's done, it'd be great to get him back on the podcast to talk about that. And also, Brodie, if you're listening, you need to go and fix your Instagram link on your website. It takes you to a different Brodie Sharpe.
This is a good test to see that if he listens. I think I'm like one of the busiest people in the world. And then when we talk to Brodie about like everything he does and how hard he works, he's a grafter.
And he seems so enthusiastic. He mentioned that, you know, when it's a passion, it doesn't tire you. And I was thinking, no, I'm quite exhausted.
As ever with our guests, I always come away feeling a lesser mortal going, really, come on, Eddie. Shape up, Eddie. Do more.
Yeah, I don't like plugging other podcasts, but it is a good podcast to listen to. I think it's a Jay Dishery. There's the latest one I listened to, and there's some great subjects discussed there. Upcoming.
Coming thick and fast, these races. I'm getting pre-race anxiety already.
So what we got? We have got the Loopy Latrig Fell Race, optional fancy dress. So I'm looking forward to, his name's blanking me, but there's a photographer over that way he always photographs their events basically. Really, really good images. So yeah, hopefully people go for fancy dress, but nothing with too much wind resistance because...
Is that this weekend? Yeah. Oh, dear.
Yeah, my goodness me. Luckily, Latrig's not the highest of peaks, and you might be sheltered by Blencathra and Skiddaw, depending on which way the wind's coming from. But yeah, best of luck with that one.
We've got the Brecon to Cardiff Ultra, a linear 70-kilometre race along the picturesque Taff Trail. The race starts at 8 on Sunday, the 20th of February in Brecon and finishes at Coleg y Comend, Nagra. No, that definitely had an Indian underlying, not a Welsh
Yeah,
My
you were. It
Welsh
was.
heritage. I'm a quarter Welsh. Be absolutely appalled. Sorry, Mum and Dad.
Well, I copied that for you to say it because I knew
I knew you did. Somebody Welsh speaking, tell us how we pronounce that. But I've heard lots of good things about this race. A nice little opener as well for a winter ultra as we start turning our heads towards spring. Not too quickly, please. I still need another month.
Yeah, 70K is quite a nice distance, isn't it? It's
yeah, I've entered 100K in April, and now I'm thinking that's quite punchy, isn't it? I'd prefer to start the season with like a 60, 70K. Maybe I'll just call it time at 70K.
Yeah.
Check.
What you got coming up, Eddie?
Oh, Lord. I know I whine, but I've got another week of this. We're only halfway through. I've got another week. Next week gets even tougher. It's not just having the kids at home all the time. I love them. I love spending time with them. It's the fact that like Morsey normally has about 3,000 people in the sort of like in season. Yeah. And at the moment, there's about 30,000 people in the town. I mean, I can't even explain. I mean, even just driving is truly terrifying because people have got skis, they're on their holiday and they just step out into the road and there's small children and there's... Yeah. It's just carnage. And what normally takes you like 2 minutes takes you like 35 minutes. And then if it's snowing, people aren't used to driving in the snow. And then, it's just so everything is stressful. And you know me, Gary, I cope so well with change and stress.
An ex-girlfriend's dad had a guest house in Lynmouth, beautiful place. But for someone who basically relied on tourists, he hated tourists because they couldn't function. He said they'd just be walking in the road, Gary. I can't understand it. Why Monday to Friday or where they live, they'd stick to the footpaths.
Walk in the road, would you? And you like round your normal,
No. Go on holiday.
Or as you're driving, just stop. Just stop in the road. Yeah. Like, just at least indicate, like, I know, and they give me rage. And then I hear the kids go, oh, the tourists. I'm like, oh, God, it's almost a bit...
You gotta be careful. Kids are always watching, Eddie.
Always watching. Try and keep the cool. So I'm going to, I don't get any skiing done because it's carnage as well. I mean, you think it's carnage downtown if you headed up to like anywhere around my mountains. So I'll keep going with a little bit more. I'll do a bit more treadmill, a bit more biking, and try and stop from getting the rage and keep working on what I'm going to be doing, thinking long term about how I'm going to keep prepping towards April, June. Well, you've got a lot to do, Gary. Your life is a lot more exciting than mine.
I don't know about that. But yeah, I got my sister's wedding on Friday, so I'm super excited for that. But I've got a race the next day of Sedgefield Harriers. So
no, you're not going to be the life and soul of the dance floor.
I will not be drinking.
YMCA.
I will dance, because...
do you like a bit of a dance on the dance floor?
Well, left to my own devices, no, I wouldn't dance. But if Lisa wants to dance, I'll dance with Lisa.
You old rip.
I won second prize in the Miners' Strike disco in the local workmen's club.
What song? Did you have to do a routine? We need more details.
So a disco, and somebody from the committee probably judged the winners. It was probably all rigged. The favourites won.
What's your song of choice that gets you up on the dance floor?
Oh goodness me, we had to submit some songs. I'm a bit of a metalist, and probably Nirvana, people like that. I'll get up.
Not sure that's going to be the opening tune to get everybody up on the dance floor.
I do like a bit of ABBA though,
Go wrong with a bit of ABBA.
And I do like. Remember a band called the Blow Monkeys?
Tell me a song.
I think it's called My Scene or something like that. I'm not singing it. No way am I going to sing it for you.
No way, Eddie. I'm not doing that.
But it's a wicked song. Yeah, that kind of 80s. I like some of that. But yeah, anything ABBA. Well, who's not going to dance ABBA? I do love a bit of ABBA. So I've got the relays, which is only 2.2 miles around the Hetton Lions Lake. So that should be good. But unless it's cancelled, who knows? How it's going to go.
Yeah, stormy.
It's not. The course should be pretty safe. It's just getting people there and back safely.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But I should have had a little chat with Brodie for some free advice. I've got a bit of an achy knee, Eddie. My left knee is.
Talking to you.
It's having a little conversation. I would say it
How
goes
does that
to
conversation go?
I'd just say, shut up, I'm going for a run.
I want a bit of rest, Gary. I want a bit of rest. Shut up. I'm going to run an 87-mile week.
I would say it's about a 2 out of 10. And it does get better as I'm running.
Yeah. It's so annoying, those niggles, aren't they? Because you're like, you don't want to be that person, do you? You don't want to be Pete. No. But it's also like, but it's not getting any worse. It's just a niggle.
Yeah. Keep an eye on it.
Get that quad stretch, get that hammy stretch.
But I know the funny thing is it doesn't give me any pain when I'm just sitting around or doing something. But say if I was going upstairs to bed, then when I'm leading with my left leg, definitely can feel it then. But today I consciously just did, I think it was like 3 miles, super easy with Rex on the trails. And I would say the pain had gone down, whether it's a moment, like a temporary relapse or respite, we will see. But tonight is Thirsty Thursday, so we'll give it a little bit of a test.
Get that squashing. Got to get that squashing, Gary.
A test tonight. But it is a really good excuse to get my backside on the bike and do a bit more Zwifting. So like I said earlier, off air, I need to be a bit more mindful with the Zwift. I've done a training plan to increase my FTP. So hopefully weave that into my week a bit more. I'm just really surprised how much of a routine person I am. That's really, if it's not on the plan, it sits there with a towel, a stinky towel and a stinky t-shirt on it. I need to get on that. But other than that, I think I had to go to the lakes, but I don't think that's going to happen with the weather. It's not really. I want to film some stuff. I've been asked to film the Adidas Terex route, which is part of the Keswick Mountain Festival. So I want to do that, but if it's raining, I just can't.
No, maybe not. This weekend's not the
Cameras
weekend.
and rain don't mix.
We had loads of lovely messages, Facebook messages, Instagram comments about our interview with Debbie. Everyone loves the Debbie chat. Just an amazing lady, but I think so many people can be like, but she's just a normal lady, and she just copes with everything with such good humor and makes it real, and I think a lot of people think like she talks about it like just like it's just like so inspirationally, she's like, it was really, really hard, it was horrible, but if I can do it, like you can do it. So like me,
people did interact with that post. It was quite amazing. I was surprised how much activity it generated. It was great. So
thanks again, Debs, for coming on the show. And we had a lovely review from John Sink. John, I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. How wonderful. What a way to start a sentence. I love a sentence. I know it's like when you open an email, isn't it? And it starts a bit disgruntled and you're like, oh, thanks. And someone sends it starts a conversation with how wonderful. John, how wonderful, back at you. Love the Debbie interview. I feel I'm ready for Spine Challenger 2024. I would say, John, perhaps you're not ready. Like maybe do a little bit more than listen to the podcast in your preparation. Also love the general chit-chatting. That's lucky because there's about an hour and a half of it today. Watched on YT, YouTube. Didn't know what that was, but we definitely would download to take some on my long ones. I would say do that. I'd say this is better as going through your ears and looking at
listen.
Better listen. I need to hear the UTMB rant. You definitely need to hear the UTMB rant. I'm over it, but go back and have a listen. I think it's episode 74 because somebody asked me the other day. Keep up the good humor. We always will keep up the good humor. Thanks, John, for taking the time.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate that. Right, we've got a hilarious competition. Before we start with the competition, I feel I need to give you a little update. People have been asking about the Cheer Charge mouse that ate the Cheer Charge bar and then tried to what happened to the Cheer Charge mouse. Well, there's another volume in Cheer Charge mouse story. I was getting my eldest ready for school very early in the morning last week, and I found said Cheer Charge mouse in the Cheer Charge box, which is in the cupboard behind me. That's why I'm sitting here today, so I could see. So, of course, being, the sort of strong, confident woman I am, I screamed and said, "Oh my God, there's a mouse in the snack box." So I got my husband to come and get a Tupperware. They don't like to kill animals, even though it's eaten a lot of calories in our house, and many of my snacks. I was like, let's just take it. So he hilariously, we got it in Tupperware. Sadly, the Tupperware we used for like the seconds for lunch the next day. I was like, let's cross that bridge when we next use that Tupperware. And we put the fattest mouse I've ever seen.
I'm not surprised.
Clearly,
on that omega-3.
He got it in the Tupperware. Anyway, he walks my eldest to the bus stop in the morning because it's dark and it's icy. And so off they went with this mouse. He came back. I was like, "Where did you put it?" And he said, as if it was a ridiculous question, he was like, "I put it by the bus stop." Oh, I just thought, like, it's quite. I was like, are you hoping that it's going to stop the bus and get on the bus and take itself far away? Anyway, so the mouse went off on a little trip. We hoped somewhere far. Anyway, later on that day, I came back from my run. I kid you not, the mouse was on the decking waiting for me.
Oh,
it
what?
I was like, there can't be another fat mouse. And it was literally sitting there at the door as if to go,
Yeah.
I'm back.
You need to get a bit of felt tip.
I'm vanished. He took me on a little ride. I've had a holiday. Anyway, I gave him short shrift. I was like, shit. Anyway, he's not been back. He's not been back into the snack cupboard. So whether he's found his way back into the house, but I thought that was hilarious that he's taken away the bus up and then he's come and found his way back. But it's all been quiet. So I don't know what he's found something else to feast on. Anyway, I don't mind. Little mouse.
Yeah. When the mice turn to rats, that's the problem, isn't it?
Oh no, he'd go straight in the river. Sorry.
Yeah. We had mice when we were feeding the birds, and like I think I mentioned before, then the rats came, so we had to stop feeding the birds until we've managed a system to stop the feed going on the floor. Because it's the starlings, the sparrows and the bullfinch and all those other birds, they're pretty, the blue tits and all that, they're great. But the starlings descend on the bird feed, and it's just all the other little
birds,
and the rats come. That's good.
That could be the start of a good film, wouldn't it? And then the rats go. We think this is hilarious, this competition, so nobody else.
Well, it's going to me or Tim. It's not going to be hilarious, so we've got to count.
So, when you go to the old village fairs, they do how many sweeties in a jar? We're going to do a competition. How many guess how many chia charge or chia seeds are in a classic chia charge 30-gram bar?
30-gram bar.
So they're the smaller ones, aren't they? They're not the big
little ones. Can you see that? Yeah.
Okay, smaller ones. Do we need to say flavour? Should we just go?
The classic.
Just the classic. The classic 30-gram. Guess how many seeds in there? And do you know who's going to count them? Gary.
Or Tim.
We've come up a system. So I'm going to pop a post on Facebook and you can have a guess. If you guess, well, we're going to give, somebody might guess exactly the right amount, I guess.
Yeah, if we get two matching correct answers or two nearest correct answers, then we'll just have to pull them out of a hat. We could take two winners.
One winner. Are we going to have two winners?
Yeah, two winners. Well, as a big thanks for our super duper listeners and all the mega downloads that we've had.
How many downloads? Every week when we come to record, Gary's like, have you seen the stats, Eddie? Have you seen the stats? I'm like, I don't even know how to get on the stats. Tell me.
We have smashed, not just creeped past, we've smashed past the 100,000 downloads. It's over 2,000 a week we're getting at the moment, which blows my mind.
It's not just my mum and Lisa then that are downloading. There's a few more people.
It's absolutely.
And what? Go on, tell us what number we're in the podcast chats. You were so proud of this, Gary.
Currently number 3.
Number 3.
In the not so heavily filtered UK running podcast chart. I think that's quite relevant to us. We can't compete with Adam Buxton and Louis Theroux and people like that. We're not in that kind of realm, but the running space, to be number 3, it's absolutely, because I remember when mind-blowing. It is, but I remember when we first started, and I think Holly Rush shared something, because Marathon Talk was charted well. So that was only when I kind of thought, oh, there is a chart for podcasts. And yeah, if we got to the top 10, top 15, that was quite a big deal. But now for a few weeks now, we've been within the top 5.
Come on.
Thank you so much, everybody. Really.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks so much. And keep downloading. Competition closes 1st of March. That's when we'll draw the winner, and you will win a box of Cheer Charge goodies.
I've worked it out. Should I give them the percentages?
No.
Okay. That's a teacher in you there, shushing me.
I'm so sorry. If Bryn does that to me sometimes, he shushes me. Oh my God, does that give me the marital rage?
I wouldn't like a proper shush.
To be fair, I deserve to be shushed a couple of times a week. Eddie just needs to be told either to get off her box or just to pipe down. Pipe down, Larry. Right, everybody, that was episode 77. If you got this far, thanks so much. Thanks for listening. Thanks for 5-star reviews. Thanks again to Cheer Charge for sponsoring the show. Get counting those Cheer Charge seeds. My name is Eddie Sutton.
And I'm Gary Thwaites.
And let's run to the hills.